The poem we're going to look at today is a poem by Lisel Mueller. Monet refuses the operation. Just a background for a moment. This poem I first heard at the end of a tour led by a docent at the National Gallery in London. And it's a poem about a work of art. There's even a fancy name for poems about works of art. We did one already. Auden's poem about the Bruegel painting of Icarus falling into the sea, the landscape. They're called ekphrastic poems. You can look it up. So let us read the poem. Monet refuses the operation. Doctor, you say there are no halos around the streetlights in Paris, and what I see is an aberration caused by old age and affliction. I tell you, it has taken me all my life to arrive at the vision of gas lamps as angels, to soften and blur and finally banish the edges you regret I don't see, to learn that the line I call the horizon does not exist, and sky and water, so long apart, are the same state of being. 54 years before I could see Rouen cathedral is built of parallel shafts of light, of parallel shafts of sun. And now you want to restore my youthful errors, fixed notions of top and bottom, the illusion of three-dimensional space, wisteria separate from the bridge it covers. What can I say to you? What can I say to convince you the Houses of Parliament dissolves night after night to become the fluid dream of the Thames? I will not return to a universe of objects that don't know each other, as if islands were not the lost children of one great continent. The world is flux, and light becomes what it touches, becomes water, lilies on water, above and below water, becomes lilac and mauve and yellow and white and cerulean lamps, small fists passing sunlight so quickly to one another that it would take long, streaming hair inside my brush to catch it, to paint the speed of light. Our weighted shapes, these verticals, burn to mix with air and change our bones, skin, clothes to gases. Doctor, if you could only see how heaven pulls earth into its arms, and how infinitely the heart expands to claim this world, blue vapor without end. Blue vapor without end. This obviously is a poem about light and a poem about reality. The doctor laments the fact that Monet's cataracts are not allowing him to see clarity. There's no clear demarcation. Everything blends into one. And Monet responds, no, what I've learned from this, which I don't want to give up, is the lightness of all being as part of some greater whole. And this is expressed in Monet's series of paintings that he did the same scene over and over again in different light. And you can see some 100 paintings of the Thames, the paintings of the cathedral at Rouen that is referred to here, that are really shafts of sun, and the famous, well-known paintings of the gardens and the bridge and the lilies at Givenchy, Monet's home that he painted. Well, the world is light. When we understand that, in fact, we might talk of ourselves as being enlightened. Do you not see the idea? So without light, we in fact could not see or be seen. A wonderful line in a poem by Denis Levertov, light by which we see and are seen. But imagine that we would actually want to see light. Can we see light, or is light merely a medium through which we see and are seen? And if we were to see light, what would we in fact see? Well, there is a pasuk, Ki imcha mekar chayim, for you, with you, God, you are the source of all life. Be'orcha, through your light, nire or, we shall see light. In other words, ultimately, there is the idea or the poetic conceit that the greatest thing one could see is light itself. Now, we express this actually in a poem that we sing on Hanukkah, in which we say, the ein hanerot halalu kodeshem, these lights are holy. The ein lanu reshut lishtamesh behem, we can't use them. Light is not merely a vehicle through which we see something else and are seen, but rather elalir otam bilvad, to see light itself. When was light created? Actually, light is the first thing that is said to be created. Vayom Elokim, God said, Yihi or, let there be light. Vayihi or, and there was light. So to see light is a concept of seeing something very profound. Now, the fact that we can't exactly understand what this means and say, well, this is a province of poets, okay, can't quite get it, is actually expressed by Chazal, who say, this light, the rabbis say, what does it mean, light created, especially since the sun has not yet been created in the days of creation. So the rabbis say that this light is a primordial light, and it is such a powerful light and such a difficult kind of light to conceive that has been put away for the righteous, latid lavo, for those people who really, really get it on the most profound level. Now back to the National Gallery. National Gallery is important here, but here I have to go off and tell a story. Many years ago, I was in Toronto, and I was staying with some gracious hosts, and I asked the lady of the house, the hostess, whether there was a museum in Toronto. And she looked a little bit confused at this question that the rabbi was asking, and she said, well, there's a shoe museum. And I said, no, a museum of fine art. She said, yes, there actually is one. She told me how to get to. I went to it, the Ontario Museum of Fine Arts, and it was worthwhile. The trip was worthwhile for one Pizarro that I saw there. The next day, when I felt, more comfortable in asking the question, I said, when I asked you about a museum, why did you tell me about the shoe museum? If I wanted to see a shoe museum, I would try to infiltrate to Imelda Marcus's shoe closet. And she said, well, Rabbi, we've had many rabbinical guests here over the year, and you will sign the ledger of rabbinical guests when you leave. And, and nobody's ever asked us if they're a museum. So I said, well, there are two reasons I like to go to museums. First of all, I like art. And second of all, because I know that if I go to a museum, I'll never meet anybody that I know. Well, there's one museum that I'm always a little worried about, that maybe I will meet somebody I know, and that's the National Gallery of Fine Arts. And why is that? Because there is a well-known story that when Rav Kook was a rabbi in London during the First World War, having been stuck outside of what was then Palestine, he came to the National Gallery and saw a painting by Rembrandt, the Belshazzar painting, and was so moved by it that he would tell people who came to London that they had to go to the National Gallery to see this Rembrandt. Why? Because Rembrandt's use of light that they see in this painting is so phenomenal. He got light. And that ability must mean that Rembrandt was one of those tzaddikim who captured the primordial light. And so there might be people standing there looking for the light. On this tour that I went a few years ago in the National Gallery, we started off somewhere in the early medieval paintings and wound up this tour with the docent in front of a Monet. And at that point, talking about the Monet, the docent read this poem that I've just read by Lisel Mueller. And of course, I was so moved by this that Rav Kook's instructions to go to see with a Rembrandt reverberated in my mind, resonated as a result of this poem. And I thought Rav Kook's observation about Rembrandt's use of light, as great as Rembrandt was, Rembrandt used light, so through light we could see. Monet actually sought to paint light, to capture light itself, to paint the light as primordial light. And so I asked the docent, when was the first Monet acquired by the National Gallery, that Rav Kook might have seen it? She wasn't sure, and I haven't been able to check this out, although I tried, but she thought it was sometime in the 1920s, after Rav Kook had returned to what was still Palestine. So perhaps Rav Kook, had he seen Monet, would have told people to go see the Monet rather than the Rembrandt. I'm not chas v'shalom taking away from Rembrandt. This light is something we celebrate. We talk about sight, and when we talk about sight, we celebrate our ability to see and understand. Don't you see the point? Of course. And that's the great metaphor in Plato's Republic of ascending to the light, and light is understanding. This world, say the Kabbalists, is a world of falseness, and they call it the Alma de Shikra. But they also call it the Alma de Peruda, the world of separation. And it is not merely the separation of man from God, but it is a separation of all objects in the world from each other. The fact that there is distance of things and distance of people, when really the world represents a kind of a metaphor for God, as God is one The world has a oneness, and that is what Monet saw. Not the sharp barriers between things, not the separation between things, but the interdependence, or what the Torah says, man, you are in the world, but li'ovda u'lishamra, guard it, be with it. And Monet was seeking in light, not to have light show the distinctions, but have light and to see through the light the unity of all. Ki imcha makor chayim bi'orcha nire or, for with you is the source of all light. Through your light we shall see light. Again, once more. The world is flux, and light becomes what it touches, becomes water. Lilies on water, above and below water, becomes lilac and mauve and yellow and white and cerulean lamps, small fists passing sunlight so quickly to one another. To paint the speed of light. Doctor, if you could see, if only you could see how heaven pulls earth into its arms and how infinitely the heart expands to claim this world, blue vapor without end. So one day, perhaps, we'll meet in the National Gallery and look at Monet's light, which is an attempt to see the light of God.